Shalom. This is the Israelity podcast.
And on this podcast, you are going to get an Israelity check. So get your pita, get your hummus, and get ready.
Perfect. I have to say that the first episode was more about us. So now that we have this behind us, we can move forward. Today, we are going to talk about should tourists be scared to visit Israel? But before that, I do have to say that I read some of the comments on the previous episode and I saw that people were commenting, oh, Hananya, you love India so much that your wife's name is India. So you really love India. So yeah, folks, I really do love India. And we did, I don't know if you came up with this sentence, but you said, Hananya, you love India so much that you had to find a woman whose name is India and marry her. So yes, we love India. But coming back to our topic, I do want to go over some statistics because in 2022, over 1,780 terrorist attacks against Israelis were carried out and foiled in Israel. 24 Israelis were killed. Perhaps this number is higher. And 158 were injured on the day we are doing this podcast. So these are very troubling numbers of terror attacks in this small country called Israel that is in the size of New Jersey. So I have this question for you. With these given numbers, should people be scared to travel to Israel?
Well, actually, Hananya, I have a story for you. On the first day I arrived here in Israel back in 2020, I witnessed a terror attack in Jerusalem. Can you believe that?
Oh my goodness. Okay, sounds like fun.
So this is what happened. It was January of 2020. It was a cold, wintry day in Jerusalem, and I was wandering around the old city. And if you know anything about Jerusalem, there's Jerusalem, the city, the greater Jerusalem area. And then there's the old city, which is the oldest part of Jerusalem. These parts are ancient and they're surrounded by large walls that are like fortresses. And they were built in the 16th century by the Ottomans. Now, in these walls, there are four main gates. And one of them is the Damascus Gate. So I was wandering around this area. It's beautiful. These gates, they're made of this sand-colored stone. It looks like this castle entrance. I think the Damascus Gates is one of the most beautiful gates in Jerusalem. And as I'm taking photos like a tourist, I didn't know at the time I would be here as long as I have been. I started hearing some screaming and suddenly everyone's running and it's my first day, so I have no idea what's going on. So suddenly I look down at the gate and I see this woman with a knife and she had attempted to stab one of the border police.
That was stationed there?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
In his olive green uniform I had seen, and he had this big vest on, but he was on the ground and there was blood.
Was he injured?
Ground. Yes, he had been injured on his head.
Oh, wow.
And I saw him, with blood on his head and I saw this large woman. It shocked me. There was a woman on the ground that they had pinned, and she had attempted to stab this border police officer with a knife. And
wow.
I immediately started filming. That was my journalistic instinct. I didn't really feel afraid because there were so many officers around. I did feel safe that they immediately neutralized the situation. But I was so shocked to see that the culprit of this attack was a woman. I had never imagined that, a woman would be here carrying out these attacks because statistically, men are the ones who are carrying out these attacks most of the time. So she was this large woman wearing...
Fat woman, yeah.
She was hefty.
We're not politically correct here.
So she was wearing black head to toe in a hijab, and the police were taking her away in handcuffs, and they put her into this car and drove her away. And later that day, I looked on the news and I saw she was 50 years old, which was something else that shocked me because at 50 years old, you have a husband and children. And it made me think, what would lead her to commit such an act? What caused her to do such a thing? Because certainly she knew that she could have ended up dead and shot for trying to attack a border police officer? And two, does she know the consequences of this crime? And, she has a family. Is she willing to leave them behind? And those were a lot of the questions I was having the very first day that I had arrived here.
What a fun day.
I do want to say the officer was not killed. Thank goodness. And thankfully, the security there was skilled enough to be able to neutralize the situation where no one was critically injured. But it was quite scary. But
did they shoot the terrorist? Did they shoot her?
They did not shoot her.
Oh, they just...
No, they did not shoot at her whatsoever.
Okay.
They pinned her down. And that actually shows a lot. They really try not to shoot as a first resort. They really tried to neutralize her using force, physical force, rather than using weapons.
It must have been a very interesting day for you on your first time in Israel. So you probably...
I was too afraid to tell my mom that was how my first day went, because she was gonna feel nervous and scared.
Yeah, you were probably like, well, is this the Holy Land? But
I will say this is very unusual. This is something I don't think any other person has seen here in Israel.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm the only one that's seen this. And, I have a coworker, and she always says, India, you have just the craziest stories. This doesn't happen to anyone else. And I'm like, I don't know why this is happening. Thankfully, I'm never directly involved in the situation, but I see these crazy things play out, and this is just one of them. The first day I come to Israel and I see a terror attack, and I have it on video.
Oh my goodness. Yes, it is quite unusual. But I do have to say that recently the Israeli police reported that they have experienced one of the most violent nights in Jerusalem. There were a lot of riots, really. Palestinian radicals were rioting in Sheikh Jarrah and East Jerusalem and just throwing fire bombs, pipe bombs, and rocks, Molotov cocktails on Jews and on the Israeli police. So they basically classified it as one of the most violent nights in Jerusalem. Now, contrast to that, just to show you how the reality in Israel continues, whether there are terror attacks or not, a night after that most violent night in all of Jerusalem, me and my brother actually went to Jerusalem. My brother was like, hey, Hananya, you promised me that we'll hang out, because I had to cancel again and again and again, postpone. I'm sorry, I'm one of those sometimes. Anyways, we went to Machne Yehuda, which is in Greater Jerusalem, not far from the old city, actually. And we were having fun, relaxing. It's a place where people, the Jerusalemites go to eat, drink, relax, and just have fun. And from there, he said, we're in Jerusalem. We might as well just take a walk to the old city, right? So, of course, I said, yalla, let's do it. So we're walking. And again, that's one night after the most violent night. And the old city was just empty. No one was there. All the shops are closed. It's just a different Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. So I do want to say that if you're coming to Jerusalem, I do recommend you to see Jerusalem during the day and during the night, because these are two different cities and experiences. The walls are glowing with this golden-like light that shines on them. And so while we're walking down the alleyways of the old city, we started in the Christian quarter, walking down towards the Western Wall. And it was around 1 a.m., 2 a.m.-ish. So, which was also interesting because we saw a lot of worshipers, a lot of Jewish worshipers praying at the Western Wall. And
at that late at night.
And
wow, so it shows that there really is 24
dedicated,
hours of prayer
really
here
dedicated.
In Jerusalem going on.
Yes,
wow.
And I have to say, whether you're spiritual or not, you feel something different there. You feel something like a strong presence there.
Absolutely.
At the Western Wall.
I've been there with atheists, and they themselves have told me, I do not believe in God, but I felt something there.
Indeed. And, so as I'm walking with my brother, I like to ask tough questions. So I asked him, yo, are you scared that, because it's just us here. plenty of security cameras, but it's pretty much just us. Are you scared that something would happen to us while we're walking here? Because we saw several videos of these terror attacks happening in Jerusalem. And he said, well, first of all, I'm armed. He carry arms with him. In Israel, you kind of can. It's not that easy like in America, but you can carry arms. But he did say, no, I'm not scared at all, because this is my capital city. It's very safe, and the news, they always like to, make things look worse than they are in reality. They make it look like you can't just take a nice, quiet walk in the old city of Jerusalem and have a conversation with your brother, which we just had. But I do have to say that this was my personal experience, and I really have this feeling that most people don't experience this kind of Jerusalem,
So why are we seeing these terror attacks here in Israel?
I think that people have been asking these questions for decades, but my take on this is that I feel like these radical Palestinians want to drive us out of our ancestral homeland. They believe that through terror, political terror, they will be able to drive us out of our ancestral homeland. That we will be like, oh, we're scared, we're afraid, so we'll just pack our bags and go back to where we came from. Now, it is funny because it doesn't work. The more terror attacks that are happening here, the more blood that is spilled, unfortunately, we are more encouraged to have a stronger grip on our land, build more communities. This is my solution, I think, to terror attacks in Israel, by the way, to build more communities, to establish more families, build more homes, take what is ours. Because, it's funny because if you have an argument with someone that tells you that, hey, this is mine, so what do? You go back in history. You were like, okay, so show me, when was it yours? Okay? And that argument is, they can never win this argument. We are here. Jerusalem has never been the capital of any other people. King David established Jerusalem, made Jerusalem the capital of his kingdom in the year 1000 BCE. So you just can't argue with the facts. But my take is like, sure, if we take the history argument, we're going to win. But it's not going to take us anywhere. So let's have a civil conversation of, okay, you are here, we are here. Let's find a way to live, coexist, and to not have conflict.
Absolutely.
But unfortunately, on this other side, they're not willing to converse. They're willing to drive. Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian president, is willing to fly all the way to the other side of the world, New York City, and preach over the stage of the podium of the UN about how much he wants peace, but Israel does not want peace. But he refuses to drive 20 minutes from Ramallah to Jerusalem to actually negotiate peace.
Wow.
Because time and time again, they said no to peace. So this is my take, but, I do want to, I feel like I'm talking a lot, but it's because I'm so passionate about this topic. But I do want to say, coming back to your story about, experiencing terror attacks terror attack in Jerusalem. When I was in the army, I served in the Armored Corps. But I did ask after a year and a half to go on combat medic course academy, because I wanted to do something even more meaningful to save lives. So it was a 4-month course. I finished it and became a combat medic. Now, on one of my missions, we were asked to come to this checkpoint between a Palestinian village and an Israeli community in Judea and Samaria. This is all happening in the heartland of Israel. And while we're there, there was this Palestinian teenager that ran with an axe, this old rusty axe, towards one of the Israeli officers that was there.
Wow.
And she tried to hit him with that axe. Now, of course, what do? You neutralize the threat. So he shot at her and neutralized her. And given the fact that we were there, the military ambulance, so we started to treat her to save her life, because when you join the Israeli army, and especially a combat medic in the Israeli army, you take an oath to treat everyone. So we're treating her. Obviously, you approach her and you see that there is nothing you can do. But part of the procedure, you have to take. She was wearing a coat, so we were taking the coat off so that we could see where the bullet had entered and if there's an exit. Now, while we're doing that, we see that she had like these red wires concealed in her like jacket. Now, obviously, I didn't know if it's a bomb or not, but you don't take any chances when you're in that conflictual area. So I told everybody, back up. We had the bomb expert to come and deal with her. But I did see her ID card, and I saw that the birth year was 1997.
Wow, that's the year I was born.
Yes, and I was just standing there thinking, is this how she chose to end her life? Wow. She woke up one morning, chose to charge at this IDF officer, and just for what? Out of hatred.
It's really heartbreaking that someone so young, I believe she was around 16 years old, that she gave her life for this.
Yeah. And
it's heartbreaking.
It breaks my heart. I don't have compassion for radical terrorists, but I do think that who is responsible for this is the leaders that have been radicalizing
these children.
The minds.
She was a child.
Yes, they were radicalizing the minds and thoughts and hearts of the next generation.
Yeah.
And it just breaks my heart because then you're asking, where's the adult person in this whole situation? Where are their leaders? Mm-hmm. And their leaders are the very ones that are radicalizing them. They're teaching them in schools that Israel does not exist. And if you see an IDF soldier wearing these uniforms, you need to know that this is a monster that that is oppressing you. Not to mention all the facts that we're seeing actually videos of Palestinian kids playing soccer with IDF soldiers and getting snacks from them, meaning that they know that we are not really their enemy. We're not really there to oppress them, but we're actually providing security for them as well.
And are there consequences for people who commit these acts of terror? Because I'm thinking, clearly when we commit some sort of act, we think of the consequences, whether they're positive or negative. What are the consequences for these people committing acts of terror, both positive and negative?
I think that the way they see it is that they're going to get a salary from the Palestinian Authority because...
Can you explain that more?
Yes, because there's an entire program called Pay for Slay. And the more you
pay for slay.
Yes, the more you murder, the more money you get every month. Okay. So ideally, they want to find themselves inside prison where they get a check from the Palestinian Authority. And keep in mind that former President Trump, he said, I'm gonna stop I'm gonna stop funding the Palestinian Authority because they were using these funds that they're getting from the EU, the European Union, the United States, and all these countries to actually pay for
terrorists. And I'm sure
terrorists.
This would infuriate taxpayers of these nations
because
they're not going to help the Palestinian people and their schools and their healthcare systems. They're going to fund terror.
If you want to help the Palestinian people, you need to support Israel because Israel is the one country that provides jobs for Palestinians. They are providing health for them. I've seeing several Palestinian families inside of Israeli hospitals being medically treated. But I think that the way they see it is that they're going to get a monthly salary and honor because, it's a society based a lot of on the fatherhood and also on respect. So we have all seen that they are erecting squares and naming streets after terrorists. So they want to be honored in their society. And it's actually very saddening to see that they're sanctifying death and terror over life and future. Because when you're encouraging people to sacrifice their children for an unknown cause, and most of these people have actually never interacted with an Israeli face-to-face, a normal interaction, and yet they're willing to go and murder them. because they're incited. But it's just mind-blowing that this is the reality. But you know what? I have a question for you, because we're talking about all these attacks, all these this radicalization, but I do wonder, how is it perceived by Americans or by foreigners that are coming to Israel?
I think there are two sides to this question.
Okay.
One, for let's say the Americans who have never ever visited Israel, they feed off of the news. So the negativity of the news is how they perceive Israel. They see it as a war zone. They see it as a place where there are always terror attacks and rocket attacks coming down on this country. So yes, I've heard many people say from the United States, those who have never visited Israel, that they would rather not visit because of what they see on the news. But on the flip side of the coin, there are Americans like myself who are here, and I realize that these attacks don't happen every day. I get to live my life here in Tel Aviv. You can walk on the beach. You can do all these amazing things and live your life. And there are no terror attacks on a daily basis. And so that is how Americans perceive Israel. And it is different depending on if you visited the land or not.
That's actually very, very interesting. Because to me, as an Israeli born and raised guy, for me, living in Israel, that's the reality that I know. So, for Americans, I guess it's very different. Or for other tourists that are coming from Europe or Asia, they were born into a different reality. So for me, it's this is my reality, that there is this. I always say that radicals have no borders. This radical ideology has no borders, and unfortunately, it exists in Europe, in America. Obviously, maybe in a different shape and form and goals. But we were talking before we recorded these podcasts that in Brazil you also have no-go zones. You have these zones everywhere, unfortunately, and we all need to find a way to deal with it. And my take is with an iron fist. You can't sit down with radicals. You can't negotiate with them. And this is actually a debate that is happening in Israel. The right-wing side is saying that the way to deal with terrorists is the death penalty. I'm among them. And the more liberal progressive side says that, no, you need to take the approach of sticks and carrots. That you need to give them something that they can lose, but keep them alive. But I don't see how this can be allowed, because if someone takes away an innocent life, why should they be enjoying life themselves? Salary, they can get a degree. They're among friends in prison, because prisons are filled with terrorists in Israel. So that's an interesting debate. I actually want to see what the viewers are gonna say about this. So if you're listening, make sure to hit us and comment and write your questions. Ask, because we do want to hear what is your take on this. But now is the time for tips and tricks. Maybe not tricks, but I do want to ask you, so what are some tips do you have for tourists that want to come to Israel but then want to be safe?
Well, if you are not coming on a guided tour with a group, my biggest recommendation to you is, if you're traveling alone with friends or family or just by yourself, is to be very aware of the geography in this area. Like we just touched on, there are no-go zones here in Israel, especially in the West Bank. You certainly don't want to be driving in a car and accidentally drive into a Palestinian city that is dangerous. And you yourself, you just told me a story of a friend you knew who drove into a Palestinian city, and you can continue.
Oh yeah, it was a new immigrant, and he did not speak Hebrew. I think his English was 50-50, much like mine. And I'm kidding, but he felt too confident. He said, I'm going to take this car and I'm going to drive it to the Cave of the Patriarchs in Hebron, and I'm going to pray there. Now, that's very good. Go and pray. I'm all for, taking advantage of our land. But on the way back, he got lost and found himself in the Palestinian side of Hebron, because even Hebron is divided. There is a Jewish side and the Palestinian side. And he got himself in trouble. Basically, Palestinians surrounded his car, and they knew that they were Israelis because he had the yellow license plate.
And the Palestinians have the green one.
Exactly. So they immediately knew that it's Israelis, and they started to surround the car. Luckily, they were nearly lynched, but the Palestinian police actually saved them.
Wow.
They apprehended them and delivered them to the Israeli army for interrogation, because according to the Israeli law, we are forbidden from entering Area A, and we're going to talk about it in the next episodes, what those areas mean. But basically, we're forbidden from entering these areas, and there are certain places in Israel where you need a military escort. So if you're coming to Israel for the first time, be confident, feel safe, but don't just take a car and drive it in
the West Bank. It's specifically the West Bank is where it can get hairy.
Yeah. So just like you said, maybe going on a group tour where you can really enjoy it.
Until you know the geography of the area well enough, you become an advanced traveler, then you can really go off on your own. But I do recommend starting maybe with a group tour.
And I also have to say that Waze, the app Waze, it does help you avoid restricted roads. So stick to navigation apps. Then I have another question for you. How to not get lost in Israel? So when you were in Israel, your first days, your first weeks, actually it was COVID, but what is a tip for you for tourists who, how to not get lost in Israel?
I would say stick to the touristic areas, and you will know very well what those areas are. You can look on websites like TripAdvisor and see those areas, and be careful not to wander too deep into villages.
But there are those tourists, sorry for interrupting, but there are those tourists that they're like, I don't want to see the Western Wall. I want to go deeper. I want to feel Israel, not from the tourist side.
I would say contact a local tour guide and, privately hire them, and they would be happy to take you around. There's so many qualified tour guides that can take you all around Jerusalem, even East Jerusalem, which is an area that can possibly be dangerous.
Yeah. Actually, I also found out that there is this fun helicopter ride. So if you have the budget, having a helicopter ride on above Jerusalem in the Dead Sea, that could be magnificent. But you'd probably need to have a few shekels in your pocket. And now, did we get any questions? Did we get any questions from the audience?
We sure did.
Okay.
One really touched me. Someone asked, what is the best way we can pray for Israel? And my answer for that is actually in the book of Psalms, or, if you're Jewish, you'll know it as Tehillim.
Yeah.
It says, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And I think the number one way you can pray for the peace of Jerusalem is to pray for the reconciliation between Jews and Arabs.
That's powerful.
Between the Jewish and Arab people. Reconciliation. Pray for the reconciliation between the Jewish and Arab people.
That's very deep. Because as an Israeli Jew, I do not hate Arabs. And I think that generalizing and hating Arabs, hating Muslims, saying that they're all bad, you're the problem here if you think that they're bad. This is powerful. Praying is courage, I think, because a lot of times you pray and you don't see results. Especially if you're praying, for the people that don't live in Israel and pray for Israel, you probably live thousands of miles, thousands of kilometers away from Israel, but we do feel the impact, and it's very powerful. Okay, so anything else?
That is it for today. I just want to thank all of you for joining us here today. We will have an awesome episode for you next week to give you more tips, more ways you can get connected to Israel, more ways you can learn about this land.
That's really amazing. So we're looking forward to getting questions, because I feel like the structure is going to be, we're going to have the main thing, and then we're going to leave time for tips
and questions. Please leave your questions in the comments on whatever social media. We are screening them all.
Yeah. Until next time.
Until next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.